And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again. It's great to have Todd Bensman back with us just before he joins the administration. So I'm glad to catch him beforehand. Todd, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Great to be here. Thank you. Good to be
No,
here again.
thank you. And you've, well, that is where people can find you. Benjamin Todd is your X handle. And you've highlighted immigration failures, the border situation, gangs and how they operate. You've given reports on the ground. And I think that's why you have become such a respected voice on the border because you've actually been to some of these um, how did hellholes maybe? I don't, we'll discuss. I don't know how you would discuss it, but some of these areas, like the Dorian Gap and the difficulty that that poses for the U.S. securing the border. So a lot of that, and obviously your latest book, I think from last year, June 2024, Overrun. How Joe Biden unleashed the greatest border crisis in U.S. history. So you spent time writing, researching, as well as being on the ground. So all of that gives you kind of your background, and delighted that you've got the call to be in the administration. I've talked to a lot of US friends, many of them pitching for positions, some of them getting that call unexpectedly. So delighted that you can give your experience, expertise, and knowledge into the administration. But pull back because you've got an individual who's involved in the border whose name has become synonymous, and that's Tom Homan. And his title is the White House Executive Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations, or Borders R for short. Do you want to let us know your perspective as an American covering this from 20 years? How has your assessment been of the work that he has done and has to do?
Right. Well, obviously, I'm going to be biased on that because I'm about to go in and he's going to be my boss. So, he's doing great, really great. Everything's great. Uh, but you know, the in fact, though, policies that the Trump administration came into office with on day one, which Homan was involved in, closed that border. We remember we had, you know, on average 7,000, 8,000 every single day crossing that border and being allowed in to the country, into the interior of the country, just stamped right in. That was the order to Border Patrol, is just like wave them through. Uh, as many as 14,000 a day, even at one point in November, December of 2023, before it started to come back down to like even, record breaking numbers then. So today we've got, 200, 300 a day crossing border wide and all of them being returned to their countries. So nobody is being let in, or very, very few, maybe 10, I think, were actually let in. There might be some gotaways that we don't know about, but even those numbers, by all accounts, are way down. We have lots of 0 days of gotaways, people that never, were apprehended. So, I you have to attribute that to the people that made the preparations ahead of inauguration, because that took all of about an hour on the very first day of the inauguration. It just it just shows what really the problem was, which was, the main pull factor was that we were letting everybody in. When you return everybody instead of letting them in, they stop coming. Miracle, like it was some kind of a miracle. But Homan's got, and me too, I guess. There'll be challenges on the second part of that agenda, which is to do, high volume deportations of those millions of people that got in, to reverse the damage, so to speak, for a number of reasons. One is you can see the lawfare going on, litigation left and right at every single turn, more litigation than we've ever seen, I think, in history on any of this. They're the opposition, people that are in favor of open borders, who are pro criminal, illegal aliens and that sort of thing are doing everything they can to gum up the works, and that's fine. We have a system for that. But also, the Biden administration um, dismantled the detention and deportation infrastructure very significantly, didn't replace personnel, let attrition happen in ICE, let the detention center contracts with private companies lapse, let closed all the family detention centers in the country, really reduce bed space, which you need to have for mass large numbers of deportations. So the Congress is fighting right now over a bill. I guess the big beautiful bill they call it, or one big beautiful bill. That money is essential to reconstructing the detention and deportation infrastructure. Once that's passed, and I think some version of it's going to pass, then you can kind of move into phase two in a more robust way. And I think I'll be coming in right about then.
Well, we're doing this on Friday. This should go out Monday, and you could be walking into that new position that day or that week. Tell us how kind of it works. And you're not obviously in government, but you've witnessed it, studied it, written about it for decades. You've got Tom Holman, who obviously is the figurehead at the border. You've got Christy Noem, who looks after Homeland Security. You've got other high profile figures that actually run lots of agencies, because this isn't a one stop shop. It's a a whole range of issues that need to be addressed. Of course, one of the ways of addressing it is for President Trump to put a post on Truth Social or X and say you're not coming in. That obviously is one way of dealing with it. But tell us a little bit of how you see or how you perceived these agencies and these figures working together to tackle something that is fairly complex.
Well, I think the president has tied them all together, all the different agencies, the Department of Defense, the CIA, moving them down to Mexico, the you know military moving down to the border, the redeployment of DEA agents and FBI agents and anybody with a federal badge and gun to the deportation operations. Gitmo, all of those things are tied together by the president's agenda on this, which is obviously a very apex issue. And the reason it's an apex issue, which he says all the time, which is independently verifiable, which is that the American public voted him into office on the strength of this problem to fix this problem. And I think he really wants to abide by those wishes. Those still, even the polls today, after controversy and all this, still show that the American people broadly support high volume deportations and the closing of that border, which is already accomplished. So I think it all goes to the leadership. The president has ordered all agencies to have all hands on deck for this thing.
But how does that work? Because you're working with individuals in those agencies. That's the, I guess, the difficulty. You've got figureheads that speak common sense, but then underneath that, you've got departments that actually are maybe staffed with people that don't see eye to eye with this, despite the fact that Biden was only in 4 years. Trump was in 4 years before, but there are big changes there. Um, Tell us a little bit about that battle trying to get, in the UK we call it the civil service, but trying to get those organs of the government actually do what the president has requested.
Well, this is a problem that all incoming new presidents face, which is that there are politicals that burrowed in as career people from the last administration and are sort of hiding down there in wormholes to undermine. And then there are people who are politicals that come in and their job is to enforce on the career people what the president wants, his new agenda. And it's like that with every president. It's not just a Donald Trump problem. And I think that they're dealing with some amount of that. Now, the Trump 2.0 is far smarter and wiser than Trump 1.0. And so they came in sort of understanding what the problem was going to be with that. And, they've been moving people out of positions, and those who aren't playing ball immediately are, reassigned and moved, or, I don't know. I'm not in there, so I'm not speaking from direct knowledge at all. But, from open sources, that seems to be what they're doing to just make sure that, all hands that are on deck are following the same, um, orders, marching orders.
I mean, for you personally, curious because you've talked about this, you've written about you being a journalist for decades covering this. Now you're given an opportunity to be involved in fixing it, and maybe part of you thought, "No, I'm happy just commenting on it," because actually, I saw an interview with Dan Bongino, and Dan saying, "Actually, this is bloody hard work. This is very difficult. I'm sacrificing a lot." It was one thing to be a commentator, and now you're in the middle of this, and you're actually having to make decisions to fix it. I mean, what's that like for you? It's a huge change from seeing the issue and discussing it and highlighting it, to actually saying, "Well, you can fix it now." Yeah, tell us how you see that personally.
Right. Well, my title is advisor to the border czar. And so I guess, part of what I'll be doing is recommending, executive orders and legislation and policy to fix these problems in a longer term, in a way that would post date Trump 2.0. So that, President Crockett or Ocasio Cortez can't come in and undo everything, um, and have another mass migration on the country. So, I don't know the extent to which, how effective I can be yet. I'm not in. I'll be looking at that. I hope to. I mean, I obviously have a lot of ideas about how to do that and what to do. I will be going in there armed to the teeth with a whole lot of ideas that I hope, some of it might stick. If one or two of them stick, I'll kind of feel a certain kind of gratification that I was able to do something good for the country. I mean, not to sound Pollyanna or, but it's true. I kind of look at this as like, a supreme honor of my life. Really, I mean, I've done a lot of different things. I was a journalist. I was an intelligence officer. I was a think tank guy reporting on the border, and this is something that is just a very rare kind of opportunity for somebody like me to actually put into practice solutions that I sort of concocted on the road or, down in the mud. And it's just an amazing opportunity. And that's how I look at it. I kind of feel like I'll be serving my country in a good way. I want to keep, everybody, all of us in within the guardrails, and staying smart on these issues, and making them bulletproof, the solutions, and we'll see what comes of it. I'm going to try my best. That's all. So, and it's just an amazing opportunity, is how I see it. I'm definitely looking at it sort of with like with some idealism, at this point. Check with me in a year, and I'll probably be some sort of curmudgeony, you know.
We'll have you on again and give you a scorecard and and see assess how you've done. But no, it is an honor to serve your country. If only the
Yes.
UK had a borders R, that doesn't exist, and that's an utter mess. But I mean, there are many aspects. One aspect, I guess, is the land border that you've touched on quite a bit there, especially in Texas. But you've got New Mexico, you've got Arizona, you've got California. Um, Is it very much depending on each state what happens? And is the president able to step over that and say, actually, the border is a national issue and is not a state issue? So, how do you say, kind of, with that border of those four states that are all fairly different? I mean, California and Texas couldn't be more different, and yet they share a land border for the United States.
Well, what happened on Inauguration Day 2025 should tell all of us that this is strictly a federal issue. Uh, the border numbers of crossings are down across all four states equally. So it really tells you that it doesn't matter what any individual state policy is, unless the border is open, where like it was in the last 4 years, where they just sort of said, we're going to let most everybody who reaches the border right into the country. Texas tried its best to intervene, but ultimately failed. I mean, they just couldn't stop the numbers. Or if they did at all, they just moved them over to New Mexico or Arizona or somewhere else. Tells you this is a federal issue.
How do you mean there are other areas in terms of the demand for people coming over? Obviously, fentanyl is often made outside the US, whether it's China or Mexico. I don't know what the production side is within the US, but there is that demand not only for people trafficking, for the sex slave, for slavery, but also the drug trade, and those seem to be a lot of the demands. And then you've got the economic migration also on the other side. I mean, how do you look? There have been I've seen less maybe about the drug issue, the fentanyl issue, and yet that's a huge issue for Americans. Well, depending where you live, maybe some states they can turn a blind eye. But when I was in California twice 3 years ago, I was utterly gobsmacked at the drug use that you could see that was plain. So I mean, how kind does that fit into that demand that brings people over to supply the needs, I guess, that parts of America have?
That's a wicked problem. That's what we call a wicked problem, which is drug trafficking over the border and demand on the supply side, and consumer demand in the United States. Very difficult to deal with that. What the administration seems to have emphasized policy wise on that is Mexico tariffs. 25% tariffs, that would really wipe out the Mexican economy if they're allowed to go forward. If the Mexicans don't go kinetic on the fentanyl production inside Mexico, it's obviously killing our people. A lot of our people are dying by accident because that stuff gets mixed into drugs and that you don't expect to have fentanyl in it. Cocaine or whatever, meth gets mixed in there, and people get killed. So that's a obviously an apex issue. It always was during the Trump administration, 1.0 toward the end, and now at the forefront of the campaign, 2.0. Um, in fact, the tariffs prompted the Mexican military to begin massive raids, kinetic military raids on fentanyl labs in especially Culiacan in Sinaloa State. Uh, by some accounts, has all but shut down fentanyl production down there in that area. That was the hub of fentanyl production. Now, that's not to say it hasn't moved to other places, and that's how they are. They'll move it around. They'll figure some way around it. The cartels, but we are seeing less seizures of fentanyl. It's down, I think, by about 50%, which is not a scientific measurement of how much is coming across overall, but it's an indicator that maybe total fentanyl smuggling is down. And one reason for that might be that the cartels have been named foreign terrorist organizations as well that have given the American um, law enforcement enterprise and intelligence enterprise the wherewithal to really put a lot of pressure on the makers of fentanyl, and they know it. There is an actual threat to them of military action, unilateral U.S. military action. And I'm told I've written about this, so I can say it. I don't have any secret sources or anything. I named Derek Maltz, who at the time I interviewed him a month or two ago was the head of DEA, and I quoted him. He allowed me to quote him by name, saying that the drug cartels that make fentanyl have realized that there's just too much at stake in their other lines of business to keep on with fentanyl. So that that they're going to, I think they're already thinking that they're shutting down fentanyl production. It's too hot, and they can make money with cocaine and meth and all their normal heroin and marijuana. So, fingers crossed it's early on that. Nobody really quite knows what's going on with that, but I think that the early signs look pretty good that, these policies might have turned the cartels against, producing that line of drug and moving it over. It's just too hot. Bad for business.
Well, and I mean, President Trump is the deal maker, and he understands business. And you're right. If you can make a business not as profitable, then they will look elsewhere. And maybe the economic side is a side that has not been used. We've talked about law enforcement, with people going with guns and raiding facilities, but actually, if you can bring the economic side to bear, then that puts pressure not only in the government but on the cartels. So, and again, those relationships with the countries you've been at the Darien Gap, Panama, Colombia, the conversation. We saw the Trump sending a group to Colombia. And within hours, the Colombian government had acquiesced because there were sanctions being put in place or tariffs. I think the same for Mexico. How kind of do those relationships work? Is it a love hate relationship? Because the US has a reliance on certainly Mexico and other countries, and vice versa. So, how does that kind of economic engagement or partnership work?
Well, at the heart of mass migration, it always involves lots of different countries, transit countries, staging countries, and the destination country, which is always the United States. Uh, it has to do with national interest being for, say, Mexico or Panama or any of those countries, is it's in their interest to ensure that those flows move through their countries and don't stay. That's it. Nobody wants to get stuck with the hot potato. That's it. It's that simple. And the national interest of Mexico, Panama, is to just get them moved through as fast as possible and exploit the flow for economic benefit. Those people are carrying a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money coming through. Legally, buying groceries and hotels and all the rest, but also illegally to the cartels and whatever. It's all good for those countries to have that money pouring through like that. The Americans have it within their power and always have to lever up a different national interest for those countries, which is that, well, we're going to ruin your economy if you don't do something about this. And so now the new, um, you know, elevated and elevating national interest is save our economy. So, that's what Trump did. He just pushed their their national interest to a different spot that was above, higher and above letting the immigration through, the flows through. And He did that with all of them. Colombia, Panama, and by the way, any president could have done this at any time. We always heard from Biden, well, the Mexicans said no. They don't want to take our people back. So we're just they said no. We'll just accept that. And Trump's, he's a different kind of fire breather, who isn't afraid to use, all the levers of state power that the United States has to toy with other people's national interests. And that's what he's done. He's just made it in their best interest to stop those flows.
And I remember seeing it within hours of President Trump being sworn in. You had agents going to the border. You've got that, and then I guess you've also got, which is the maybe the other part of it, which is the airports, and seaports, I guess, of people coming in. How does that? Because you've talked about the Biden Obama administration, basically flying people into the country in airports. Obviously, you had border guards in those airports complicit and very happy to let people come in and not do the job they were assigned to do. Can How does it work in that regard in airports? I guess that's easier to stop because you change the policy immediately within those airports or seaports, so you stop those people coming in. But have you seen that drop off in those points of entry as much as you've seen the drop off on the land border entry?
Yeah, well, for the uninitiated, what you're talking about is the Biden parole programs. And those were just this wild abuse of this element of the Immigration and Nationality Act that allows for individuals on a case by case basis to be allowed to come temporarily into the country to like get medical treatment, then they go back, or to testify in a trial or something. Then they go back, maybe 2 or 3 a year. But the Biden administration decided to apply that in a mass way. Almost 3 million people were let in either in that way, not 2 or 3 a year, but 2 or 3 million people. A wild abuse of that authority, uh, clearly illegal by my reading. I'm not a lawyer, but like even a layperson could read the law and know that that's not what they intended at all, to just have hundreds of thousands of people paroled in all day long. Well, anyway, the Trump administration flicked that switch to off, I think at 12:01 p.m. on inauguration day, and that was it. So that's over. All of those hundreds of thousands of people coming in, and on top of that, is canceled the program for the people that got in under it. There's been litigation, so those 2 or 3 million people that got in under that are technically illegal now, and a lot of them, may very well be subject to deportation. So they're gonna. That's one of the damages that the Trump administration is going to try to reverse. Most of them are going to be on. They'll have work authorization, but they also get Social Security cards. They handed out social millions of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Social Security cards to all those people, which makes it really difficult to turn those off. They can vote, they can work, they can, they got a Social Security card. They can do all kinds of, kind of legal immigrant kind of things with it when they're not legal. They're not legal anymore.
I think as a foreigner, I've been blown away by the power of the courts, by the power of little courts in the back of beyond some little village somewhere, and they seem to have absolute power. I think the American citizens have also begun to realize and be concerned at that power. How does that work? Because President Trump wants to return people to the country they belong to because they shouldn't be in the US, and then you've got this random judge that suddenly has a spotlight on them because they make a ruling. And there is this clash between the judicial system that seems to hate the country and a administration that actually wants to protect the country.
Well, listen, in this country, we are a nation of law. So, we have a court system for this purpose. Uh, I don't begrudge the other side doing it. I think the doing what they're doing, they they are using a system that's in place. Most of those decisions will end up at the Supreme Court, and we'll have final rulings on for things that we've never had rulings on before. Keep in mind that the Trump administration is doing a lot of innovative, out of the box thinking. They're bringing to bear, you know, laws, the Alien Enemies Act. They're doing things that nobody's done before. So they, in a way, are um, open to or vulnerable, exposed to lawfare. And it'll be really interesting to see if some of those innovative ideas get upheld by the Supreme Court. Um, but when the other party is in power, the Republicans do this sort of thing. We did it all the time on the Republican side. So it is what it is, and you can't really begrudge the other side for using that tool in our system. You can be irritated by it, fine, be irritated by it, but ultimately, I think it'll work out.
Tell us about how the deportations. We've seen a lot of coverage of people being rounded up, and even that language being rounded up is, I guess, used to make people on edge and concerned. And is this really something that should happen? But at the flip side is someone has broken the law. They've come in the country illegally, so of course they shouldn't be there and should be returned home. How is that been happening of those individuals being sent home? Because one thing finding who is in the country illegally, it's a second step actually taking them and returning them to their country of origin where they should be, which is not the US. So maybe your thoughts on that, the whole deportation side and how that has worked so far in the last few months.
Okay, well, those razor strips that at the rental car agency, you can they're claws, they're razor claws that go down when you go in,
Yeah.
but then they pop right back up. And if you it says do not reverse because you'll tear your tires to shreds.
Yeah.
That's exactly a metaphor for our illegal immigration. The other side knew that when they were letting them in, that the strip would go down coming in and that it would pop back up when if anybody tried to do removals. And that's an unfortunate reality of the US immigration system. There are all kinds of varieties of relief that different immigrants that came in illegally are in the midst of. They claimed asylum, they claimed a request for an exception to deportation on various grounds. They're involved in TPS, temporary protected status. They got that. All different sorts of. It's a very diverse array of processes that they're involved in. So you can't just round up people who are in legitimate asylum proceedings, or some of them are in prison, in jail, serving time. You can't just go get them out of jail. They got to serve their sentences. And there's all sorts of things, reasons why you can't just grab people in huge numbers and put them on planes. So that's kind of what they're running into. New administration is running into. It's just a matter of setting up tripwires and an intelligence in ways that enable the immigration deportation authorities to be able to know who actually is available to be put on a deportation flight. They've got final judges removal orders, but this is not. I mean, this is pretty much rocket science. It is rocket science to figure all this out because of those razor claw things. So
Um, the other you've got the legal pushback from judges. You've also got the pushback from the GOP, and it's been fascinating watching from many thousands of miles away on the other side of the Atlantic, of seeing um, I mean, the GOP can't even decide to put through some of the Doge cuts that the Musk has done, the other waste of money, and there's debate on whether that should be done or not. And a lot of the executive orders, again, discussion of whether they should become law and be passed or not. I mean, how has this been? Because surely it should be a common sense issue for any Republican in the House or the Senate that you go with a strong border that fits with your electorate. That's why the president got elected. And yet there's some individuals, I guess, who are very concerned and push back on that. So how do you kind of see that political fight that Trump has with some I guess individuals in the Republican Party who are elected there but don't see this as really important?
Well, there's a lot going on there to unpack, but mainly what happened in the House, on the House side of that, the big beautiful bill, is you had fiscal hawks that don't want to see the deficit increase. They're deficit hawks. That's their thing. Uh, and if that's your thing, and you're seeing another um, significant you know $2-3 trillion hike in the deficit, you're going to have to speak out against it for your own reelection. There's a whole other bunch of Republicans that are that are beholden to economic interests that rely on or love cheap labor. They love the illegal immigrants. They don't say it out loud, but they lobby behind the scenes against the deportation measures. Good example. There's a move within the country, especially on the GOP side, to enact what's called 287G, which basically deputizes local cops to go out and pick up illegal immigrants. It gives them immigration enforcement authorities. Doesn't take much. You get a certification, you go for a week to a school and you get a certification, and then your department can go pick up illegal immigrants at the domestic violence call or at the DWI or at the traffic accident or wherever. Or they can set up roadblocks and they can do it. The state of Florida just passed a statewide law mandating that every single police department, sheriff's department will go out and help Trump fill planes. But in Texas, they've killed every law there is, every proposal like that there is, and this is a blood red state with Greg Abbott at the helm, and they have. My understanding is that the sheriff's association, the cattlemen's association, big ag interests have very quietly been working to have the state legislature kill anything that looks like Florida. And they have successfully killed everything that looks like Florida. It may even be in the next week or so that they won't pass anything at all to help Trump fill planes. And nobody seems to be covering it or they're interested in it. But the point is there's this obviously a sentiment, powerful, backed by big money, big ag, big cattle, big oil, that likes to have illegal immigrants to hire.
Cheap labor is a if you we saw that in the Brexit debate in the UK. Cheap labor, many
Yeah,
businesses get addicted to that.
we also saw it in antebellum era United States during slavery. That's the A lot of the argumentation sounds just like what those guys were arguing back during the plantation slavery days. Well, this is really good for the economy.
No, exactly, exactly. Well, I know, Todd, the Warren posse are going to miss your many appearances, giving the insights, I think, on the border issue. But you'll be working elsewhere. Not that I want you to share all your secrets, but kind of what are your thoughts as you jump into that before we let you go on actually the things that need to be worked on, the suggestions that you want to bring that actually could bring a focus to some of these areas and see quick changes.
Well, I mean, I'm still outside the wire as we speak here, so I have no idea really what they're doing already. So, I do have a long list of my own ideas, and I'll have to go in there and reconcile it with whatever they're actually doing to make sure I'm not duplicating. And then, of course, I'm at the service of Tom and whoever else. Probably everybody's my boss. So, I'll do whatever is asked of me, however I can help. Do have my own ideas, but I'm not going to talk about those right now.
That's fine. We'll get to it about them another time. Todd, really appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to seeing how that develops. Obviously, the work that Tom Homan has done is fantastic, and I've seen that from a long way away. So wonderful that you're going to be involved in actually fixing the border and protecting America once again. So thanks for giving us your time, and the best of wishes and luck to you as you take your new position advising Holman in the border controls.
Thanks for having me. Fingers crossed.